Welcome back to this weekly update, and as always, so much going on in the world of sports business, sports law. A couple issues today to talk about from a commissioner perspective, both in the NBA and the NFL. We'll continue in the NFL with our troika of domestic violence issues that continue to concern commissioner power and what to do discipline-wise. But first, in the NBA, an interesting case I'm sure most of you have followed this week with Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, having to deal with one of his owners. As we know, the owners pay the commissioner. The owners are the bosses of the commissioner, but this one stepped out of line. The owner of the New York Knicks, James Dolan, responded to a fan letter who was complaining about the team, basically with some invectives about go find another team, go away, we don't want you, some negative language, and really some more than he should have done from an ownership perspective. An owner should be above that. An owner shouldn't be responding and stooping to the level of people that are calling him out in terms of name calling and personal attacks. Well, that's what James Dolan did. So we waited a few days to see what the commissioner would do. And he did basically nothing. I'm sure he had a private talk with him. I'm sure people in the league office wanted to address that with him personally and privately, but no sanction, no discipline. I'm not sure this is the right answer. I don't know if there should have been discipline. My sense is something should have been done. And here's where you get the slippery slope, where Adam Silver, in his first major decision as commissioner, banned David Sterling basically for life and forced a sale of his franchise. Harsh penalties right away, swift and severe, in light of the histrionics around that back then with the playoffs, players threatening boycotts, racist comments in a league that's mostly African American. You had all those issues going on, and it was quick in its severe discipline. Now you have James Dolan saying some pretty nasty things to the fan base, to his customers, and to NBA customers, and no discipline taken. I thought there was a slippery slope with Adam Silver addressing Donald Sterling in the draconian way he did. That's why this sort of sounds fishy that there's no discipline. I'm not saying there should be anything like taking away the franchise as he did with Sterling, but you would think something would have come out of this. Something, some kind of sanction. You know, it wouldn't affect the team. Stay away from the game stay away from the arena a few games, suspended from the league for a few games for a month, whatever it is. It just seems odd that there's no penalty coming from the NBA on James Dolan. To the NFL, when we talked about this firestorm of domestic violence issues back in the fall, there were three cases. There was Adrian Peterson with his son and using a switch. There was Ray Rice, of course, and the explosive video that came out on September 8th. And then there was Greg Hardy. Greg Hardy with the Carolina Panthers was accused of domestic violence and pushing his girlfriend on a bed and violent actions and 911 calls, and the bed had guns on it, all those things. Well, Greg Hardy went away as Adrian Peterson did, as we know, on the commissioner exempt list. He was paid for the year, but he didn't play. And then he goes to a judge trial who finds him guilty of his charges. But in North Carolina, it's appealable to a jury trial. That case was dismissed this week. Reason being, the accuser, the alleged victim, did not show up. The prosecutors could not find him. So what does the NFL do? We're a month from free agency. Greg Hardy, assuming he is a free agent without all these things going around, he would be a very free agent in high demand. Plays a prime position, premier position of pass rusher, would make a lot of money. Now, what's going to happen on the discipline side? Couple things. We face the same issue we did with Peterson and Rice, where his conduct was pre-new policy. The new policy calling for 6 games announced in August, and the new policy announced in December with all kinds of new implementations of domestic violence sanctions and recovery and counseling. Now, what do? Is he going to be punished in a severe way beyond the 2 games, which was the maximum before these new penalties? Certainly the union, his agent, would argue 2 games should be max if he gets that. And there will be the argument that he is not convicted because the judge verdict is vacated when he goes in front of the jury and they had to dismiss the case because of no witness. All these things in play here. The NFL will do its own independent investigation, as it always does, and it will look at the court records, which aren't much, and they will look at the police report, as they did on Adrian Peterson, who pled guilty to a misdemeanor, but was suspended indefinitely based on the actions he had in the police report of talking about hitting a kid with a switch and a stick and those kind of things. I think the same thing will go on here. Now, the witness that didn't show up for court is not likely to cooperate with an NFL investigation that has no subpoena power. Complicating this further is the new policy calls for initial discipline to be handed out by a new disciplinary officer for the NFL. That person has not been hired yet. So Roger Goodell will likely make the discipline, and there will be appeals. So get ready. Just like with Ray Rice appeals and arbitrations, just like with Adrian Peterson and appeals and arbitrations and a court case that is going on, we will likely see, depending on what the punishment is, some influence with the NFLPA in terms of what goes on with Greg Hardy. Stay tuned. Meanwhile, as we try to figure out what's going to happen with his penalty, all the NFL teams that could be interested in him are trying to find out as free agency approaches on March 10th. Lots going on with Greg Hardy. Just another example of how the NFL dominates the news in the offseason. It's the third of that troika of domestic violence cases that dominated the news in the NFL. It's not going away, and now it's dominating the news in the NFL offseason. Much more to cover here, as we will every week on these weekly updates. That's it for this week. I'm Andrew Brandt. Talk to you next week.